It started with a clip that shouldn't have resurfaced, at least not at the exact moment Snoop Dogg stepped onto a stage he once swore he'd never touch a grainy 2017 video flashed across Instagram, showing Snoop clowning every black artist he could name, daring them to perform for Donald Trump and promising he'd roast whoever folded first. Back then it was all jokes and bravado, Snoop acting like the gatekeeper of cultural loyalty. But today, that old joke has exploded back into the spotlight like a boomerang with a blade on it. And the person swinging hardest isn't a random fan or an internet troll. It's D.L. Hewley, a man who's never been afraid to rip the curtain off Hollywood and say what everyone else is whispering. D.L. didn't just call Snoop out. He dragged him with precision, flipping Snoop's own words into a mirror the entire industry suddenly couldn't look away from. He reminded everyone of what Snoop said in that old clip, how he laughed and joked and threw out the Uncle Tom bombs at artists who accepted invitations to Trump's inauguration. It didn't take long for the internet to catch the scent of hypocrisy, and once they did, the whole thing caught fire. But what made the controversy even messier was the timing. Snoop wasn't trending because of a new album or a documentary or some feel-good viral moment. He was trending because whispers had been circling him for months. Whispers about Diddy, about the old industry circles, about power players who were suddenly being dragged into allegations and lawsuits. Some fans swear Snoop's been acting different. They say he's moving smoother, quieter, calculating in ways he never used to. Others argue he's just older now, richer, and more polished. But the moment those videos of him performing at a Trump event hit social media, the comments exploded. People were angry, confused, disappointed, and ready to dissect every frame like it held some hidden message. And that's when Suge Knight's voice slid back into the conversation from behind prison walls, adding a layer of history nobody expected. Suge didn't mince words either. He hinted that Snoop had never been as loyal to Pac as fans wanted to believe. He even said Snoop lied about being kicked out of the hospital after Pac was shot, claiming it never happened. He brought up old industry wounds, old betrayals, old hierarchies of power and influence. When Suge speaks, people listen, not because they trust him, but because he has seen too much for any of his comments to be ignored. Still, nothing caused as much buzz as the performance itself. Snoop Dogg, Nelly, and Rick Ross all walked onto that Trump-connected stage like it was just another booking, just another bag, just another night. But the audience didn't even look like the type of crowd that knew half their catalog. The energy was off, the vibe was strange, and social media didn't hesitate to point out that it looked like the rappers were performing for a room full of people who only knew them from memes. Nelly was the first to stand up for himself, insisting it had nothing to do with money and everything to do with respecting the office, no matter who sits in it. He said he'd perform for Biden or Harris too, and that it wasn't about politics. Fans weren't buying it. Even with his explanation, the backlash didn't slow. People accused him of trying to spin the narrative. They said he was trying to make it look noble when it was just opportunism. And then D.L. Hewley stepped back into the spotlight, doubling down on his claim that Trump uses celebrities to manufacture an illusion of support from communities. He doesn't uplift. D.L. didn't just talk about Snoop. He talked about the pattern. Trump bringing in rappers, comedians, athletes, the people who hold influence without holding political power, hoping to signal that he's connected to the culture. D.L. reminded everyone that this wasn't new. In 2017, when Steve Harvey met with Trump to discuss inner-city housing with Ben Carson, D.L. ripped him to pieces for it. He said back then that Trump always uses black celebrities as props for photo ops, never as partners in real policy. And now, seeing Snoop on stage, the same Snoop who dogged everyone else for doing it, D.L. felt the irony was too big to ignore. The internet ran with that angle. Memes flew, comparisons spread, old clips resurfaced. People pulled out interviews from years ago where Snoop proudly said he'd never bow to politics or be used for someone else's image. And now those same fans were stitching those interviews next to his Trump event performance, shaking their heads like they'd just watched their uncle join the rival team. And that's when the conspiracy theories began. In one comment section, someone said Snoop must be playing both sides to stay protected. In another, someone joked that he showed up with his chest puffed like, "Yes, sir, I'll dance for you, sir." A different comment said Snoop must be the informant, and even though it was obviously exaggerated, enough people liked it to keep the rumor alive. That's how fast stories grow online when people are hungry for explanations. But underneath the chaos, there was something DL said that struck a nerve. He suggested that Trump's team didn't reach out to artists like Lil Pump, Kodak Black, or Waka Flocka this time around, because they'd already served their purpose. Their shock value had faded. Their headlines were old news, so instead, Trump reached above them to someone bigger, someone more respected, someone who would send a message without even speaking. Because this wasn't just a booking, it wasn't just a performance, it was a moment designed to break the internet. And it did exactly that. People argued about whether Snoop had changed or whether the culture around him had changed instead. Some said he was playing the long game, navigating an industry where alliances shift every year. Others said he'd abandoned everything he once stood for. Still others said he didn't owe loyalty to anyone, and that being a legend doesn't mean being locked into the past forever. But even among all the opinions, one truth stood out. The Snoop that fans grew up with isn't the same Snoop that stood on that stage. And maybe he isn't supposed to be. Maybe he's evolving, rebranding, expanding into a version of himself that exists beyond the old lines of loyalty and rebellion. Maybe he's stepping into rooms where power sits differently, where influence is currency, and where visibility and strategy matter more than the old codes of conduct. Or maybe he's just navigating things the same way everyone else does in an industry built on survival. And maybe that's why this story hits so hard. It's not just about politics. It's not just about one performance. It's about what it means when someone who built his image on authenticity starts moving in ways that feel foreign to the people who watched him rise. It's about the uncomfortable truth that success sometimes changes the rules you play by. And when people sense that change, even when they can't articulate it, the backlash becomes louder than the moment that caused it. The internet has been asking whether Snoop is still the same man who stood beside Pac, who challenged the industry, who said he'd never play both sides. Some people think he's just older and wiser. Others think he's protecting something we can't see. And then there are those who believe he's simply caught in the crossfire of a culture that expects legends to stay frozen in time. The more you look at everything surrounding this controversy, the resurfaced rumors, the Suge Knight comments, the industry patterns, the political optics, the more it feels like this moment was inevitable. Like the past few years have been building toward a revelation about how celebrity influence really works. And whether Snoop is moving for strategy or survival, the reaction proves one thing. People care deeply about what he represents. Perhaps the real question isn't whether he betrayed anything. Maybe the real question is whether we expect too much consistency from people who live in a world built on constant negotiation. Maybe the shock comes from realizing that even legends have to bend, adapt, adjust, and regroup when the spotlight burns hot enough. In the end, the debate surrounding Snoop's performance isn't just about him. It's about power, perception, loyalty, and the invisible forces that shape celebrity decisions. It's about how easily admiration can turn to disappointment, and how quickly the internet can transform a single moment into a cultural referendum. And maybe all of this noise is just a reminder that in today's world, every move is a message, even when the person making it says nothing at all.